Well, there are actually, I think, more interesting questions within that entire basket of issues. The first is that we have long been told that the trust land cannot be swapped, and so we have land that should be sold that is in almost islands unto itself and not particularly valuable, where we have lands that would be closer in that we might like to sell that are currently held up. There's an example of that out by Mayo Clinic right now, where a state trust land is held, cannot be broken out for sale when it would be the most valuable of those. So the formula is less troubling to me than the fact that there are perceptions on constraints that I don't think actually exist. And here would be the premise I would go down. The state trust lands were selected by the board when the state was formed. And it had the authority to select which lands it would include in the trust. I believe that same authority in the enacting legislation gives that board the power to swap lands and put for sale lands that are more valuable and would be more valuable to all of us to sell. We ought to maximize value out of that portfolio. The second thing I would do is do more carryback lending. I did that in the city of Tempe. And what do I mean by that? When the state sells land, typically we are at a loss during recessionary periods, specifically because financing is not available for purchases. So the price of our land falls, if only because the liquidity of the markets are such that there are fewer buyers who can actually acquire. I would do more carryback financing because the return we can get in the investments that we can put the money into once a land is sold is significantly more constrained. And so I would use the opportunity to sell land on notes with appropriate interest rates and deeds of trust, carryback deeds, that allow us to foreclose out buyers. Some would argue that makes the portfolio more risky, and arguably that might be the case, except that the very investment we're making is in the very land we already owned. And so in Tempe, for example, there was a piece of land that my predecessor tried to give away, a fairly valuable piece of land as part of the tax deal he structured. That deal, thank goodness, fell apart. During my tenure, we sold it for $42.5 million, and I asked the buyers not to actually pay us in cash, because had it all come in at once, my council colleagues would have found places to spend it. And instead, what we took was a down payment with $8 million annual payments, carried back a deed of trust and the notes at, I think it was 8% interest, which gave us a return on our investment which was significantly better than anything else we would have been able to get as a city, kept my colleagues from spending the money, and when the economy hit a rock in 2008 and the property eventually we foreclosed out what ended up being 60% of it, the investor developer had invested another $26 million into the property. And so that was a pretty good return for us. We got paid significantly more than my predecessor valued the property at to give it away, got that in cash. It got put into sinking funds. It helped us maintain and repair our investments and our capital items, one-time money kinds of expenditures using those funds. And when the economy goes bad, maybe you do get some of the property back, but now it's back out on the street to be sold. So we'll get paid twice.